Left over right in the front. Left over right in front. Stand by. 8 down. Ceremonial. Hard thrust.
Cheryl Fiandaca joined me a little bit earlier, and as she mentioned, this ceremony is extremely important to Massachusetts State Police, the largest law enforcement agency in New England. And one trooper will stand at the head and another at the foot of the casket throughout this wake for her family.
Obviously, very, very personal for everyone who's in attendance there. Some, obviously, who worked closely with Trooper Bucci, others who have never met her, but as you know, in the police community, it's very important for them to be there. Some dignitaries there as well. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the Attorney General, Maura Healey. We're also told that the Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito, is also there. I do believe that the governor right now is on vacation. That may explain why you don't see him there at the front of the line.
The procession of troopers begins now inside the church where the wake will begin and is underway. And we expect that it will take quite some time for these hundreds of police officers to march in. They've been in formation, gathering outside the church all afternoon. And as Cheryl noted earlier, the honor guard by her casket will rotate in and out every 15 or 20 minutes.
And of course, Paula, this is an opportunity to not just mourn, but also celebrate the life of a 34-year-old woman who, according to her parents, dreamed of being a trooper. From a young age, she had tried other jobs at certain times, from being a personal trainer to other things as well. But just 2 years ago, she graduated from the academy back in 2020. Her family says that she was just so thrilled to finally have the job that she wanted. Born in Melrose, raised in Andover, her parents in her obituary saying that she just had this magnetic energy and that she aspired from a young age to be in this position. And we all know what happened last Thursday night into Friday morning. Route 93 in Stoneham. She tried to cross over to help a vehicle that had pulled into the breakdown lane. And as she was doing that, tragically, her car, her trooper, her car was struck by a large truck, and she could not be saved.
And she leaves her mother and father, who we saw in tears there as they began to go into the church, as well as two sisters, a stepsister and a stepbrother. And you could feel the emotion in the beautifully written obituary about Tamar, that they felt that she always found joy no matter how difficult life was, and that she never hesitated to put herself, her needs behind those of others. And clearly she didn't really find her career path, her life of service, until she was able to become a Massachusetts State Trooper, which was a goal of hers. She attained it. She'd only been a trooper these last 2 years. And Cheryl and I were noting from Cheryl's vast experience of covering law enforcement, you know that they feared a moment like this. But she was putting her life on the line every day. She had begun in the Leominster Barracks, then transferred to Brookfield, and most recently was with the Medford Barracks. And she was the 22nd trooper to fall in the line of duty in Massachusetts.
It is true that every time a trooper, every time a police officer goes out to do their job, there is the possibility, and every family knows it, the possibility that they might not come home. It's one of the reasons why they have this tight-knit community. You can see there the badges that are now covered with the black ribbon to honor the Trooper Bucci. And one of the things that always strikes me, Paula, and the two of us have been on scene at some of these just very emotional funerals for law enforcement, for firefighters. If we stop talking here for a moment, even though there are hundreds and hundreds, we were questioning whether there may even be thousands of troopers. Just listen to the silence, even though there are possibly thousands of people there.
It's a moving scene there outside this church on International Women's Day, as we stop to remark on women who are leaders, women who sacrifice for themselves, their families, their communities, and certainly State Trooper Bucci represented that. Out of the well over 2,000 Massachusetts state troopers, just over 100, about 120 are women. So she was one of a small number. And as those women troopers carried her casket out of the funeral home in Stoneham, you almost had a sense what a difficult loss among such a small group of her women colleagues. And you see them here as they solemnly brought her casket into the hearse in Stoneham and then began that procession here to Revere.
We've mentioned the amount of troopers that are there, Paula, but it's not just troopers. There are sheriff's deputies. There are police officers from local communities. I know that during one of the earlier processions, the parents also thanked firefighters that showed up. These are individuals who know full well the dangers that exist on a daily basis. And sadly, in this case, that danger was alongside a highway late into the night, Thursday into the Friday.
The Massachusetts State Police noted on their Twitter feed down there to the right that massive flag you see. It has been erected there by the Boston Fire Department. They are there to show their respects to Trooper Bucci and have the American flag there across the street from the church, across Revere Street. And just any moment after the initial dignitaries, those initial officers go in to pay their respects to her family, we expect to begin to see these members of law enforcement process in themselves. And then off to the left of your screen, we have seen civilian family members, no doubt many friends, gathering, and that line stretches around the street and goes on and on. So this will be an hours-long, very painful process for her family.
It feels at this moment, Paula, that we saw the family go in. We saw some of the state officials go in as well. This feels almost like there's that private moment for them to be together as we continue to see family members outside of the church here, loved ones, friends, all gathered together, holding each other tight. It's the worst nightmare, not to use a cliche, of anyone who has law enforcement in their family, that someday a day like this could come.
Any of us who have law enforcement in our family think about the incredible risks that they take every day. And very often it is, someone at the end of a long career or someone who's had decades of service, but you can see the pain on their faces that this was a 34-year-old young woman with her whole life ahead of her, her whole career ahead of her, and how enthusiastically she embraced this responsibility.
You could see the pin that was on some of the loved ones in front of the church there. That is a picture of her in her state trooper uniform. Obviously, that was a big thrill for her when she graduated from the academy, to have that uniform, to wear that uniform. The picture you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen is from the ceremony that was held at Gillette Stadium back in 2020. And you also want to talk about someone's legacy, obviously, on a day like this. And her family believes that she should be an inspiration to others, that growing up, if you have a dream, if there's a job that you want, as you mentioned, there aren't a ton of female state troopers, but she wanted that job and she made her own dream come true. And the family is hoping that her story will be shared to others and hopefully inspire other people to know that dreams can be reached.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in the obituary that they had written she was strong-minded and marched to the beat of her own drum, which those of us who have daughters know is code for a very strong-willed young woman who knew who she was. She knew what she wanted, and she clearly had worked really hard for it, obviously with the encouragement and support of her family. And now, after her too brief career with the Massachusetts State Police, all of her colleagues and so many other members of law enforcement from around New England are there to thank her for her service and wish her well after such a difficult loss. It is very hard to imagine her family coming to grips with such a terrible accident.
And the plan is 4 to 7 tonight for this wake in Revere, although we have seen many times, Paula, that it sometimes goes past that period of time. There are just so many different troopers and police officers that want to be able to go inside and pay their respects. I would not be shocked if people are gathering far beyond 7 p.m. And then she will be laid to rest tomorrow. Yeah,
the funeral is planned. A funeral mass will be celebrated at 11 o'clock tomorrow, and for her final watch. And so we're beginning to see, as you mentioned earlier, the initial dignitaries coming out of the church now, David, and we should listen in here for the commands, and we expect to begin to see her fellow state troopers begin to process through the wake.
Detail standby! First platoon only! Out! 10! Who? Left! Face! Column files from the right! Column right! March!
Have to respect, Paula, and be struck by the precision of a moment like this, the respect that is given to the moment. These troopers and police officers have obviously been taught, and you can tell that every moment they are there is a moment of respect for this young trooper and her family.
And we know there's no way every one of these officers that we see filing in could have known her, but they all went through her training. They know the risks that she faced at 34 every single day, every single night in her service. And so that bond, obviously, is with all of them and with all of their families and her family as we go through this wake. And we would be remiss, David, if we didn't just mention as they file into a Catholic church. This is, of course, a very heavily Catholic area, part of Massachusetts. You know, the whole point of a wake and this kind of tribute to her family standing there is their knowledge, their belief that they'll see her again. So.
You have been watching hundreds of state troopers filing in to give their final farewell to Trooper Tamar Bucci. Again, funeral service for Trooper Bucci will begin tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. We will bring it to you live right here on CBS News Boston.
For David Wade, I'm Paula Eben. For now, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more news and weather right after this.
I'm Matthew Douglas. I am the Assistant Chief Observer at Blue Hill